This message brought to you by Sambo and Honky, and now by Cracker and Boy. Cracker. Produced by the Adrenaline Factory at Danger Seekers and White Men Can't Jump.
Rex Kramer, Danger Seeker.
Niggers! Say, what the
I only have 4 words for you. White men can't jump.
In case you're wondering whether this video is about jet boating, in fact it is. And here we are setting up for the run downstream on our run from the Corn Creek Ramp in Idaho to the Hells Canyon Dam, which is on the Idaho and Oregon border. And here we are starting down the river. And about a mile downstream is Granite Rapid, and some people kind of cut a diagonal across it. At this flow, I always just run down the right bank. And here's the map of Idaho, and you can see where we're running from the red dot on the right, which is the Corn Creek Ramp, and then we're going to the Hells Canyon Dam, which is the dot on the left. And each way is about 250 miles, so about 500 miles for the round trip. So here's a little bit closer view of our trip, and we start at the Corn Creek Ramp on the right of this map. Then head downstream and get to the town of Riggins, which is about 110 miles downstream. Then we head north through the town of Whitebird and then kind of hoop around over to the confluence with the Snake River. And then we head upstream on the Snake through Hells Canyon and to Hells Canyon Dam. Riggins is important because we did a little bit of refueling there, and the town is right along the river, so that's relatively easy. But most of our refueling actually happened at Pittsburgh Landing in Hells Canyon. So the attendees on this run included 2 experienced guys, one with an 18-foot Riddle and a sport jet, and the other with a 21-foot HCM with a 6.2 DI and a Hamilton 212 with a Solus impeller. Also on the run were 2 noobs, one with a 22-foot Riddle with an LSX and a Hamilton 212 with a Solus impeller, and the other with a 23-foot Benz with an LSX and again a Hamilton 212 with a Solus impeller. You viewers who are unfamiliar with this run will be particularly interested in the 2 noobs. One of them was very experienced with the first 20 miles of the run only, and the other one was somewhat familiar with the first 20 miles on the Salmon and the first 20 miles on the Snake. So in rough numbers, they didn't know and had never been on approximately 220 miles of this 250-mile run. And the first rapid we scouted on the down run is Black Creek, which is about 20 miles downstream from Corn Creek. And it's always a good idea to scout this rapid the first time you run it in the spring because it changes during the winter because of snow and ice. After Black Creek, it became my responsibility to give instructions to the noobs. And the first place I decided to stop for just some verbal instructions was just beyond Barth Hot Springs, which is maybe 2 or 3 miles downstream from Black Creek. And the rapid here is just kind of wide and messy, and there's a few rocks that are kind of sort of poking up. So I just decided to better safe than sorry and tell them what to do. I think this Google map was taken in later summer when the flow was a bit lower. We deliberately chose a flow that would be friendly to noobs for this run, and that was in the 16 to 18K Whitebird flow. The green line shows the route I always take, and there's a lot of leeway here. You don't have to hit this thing right on the money. At this flow, A lot of the river is really forgiving, so if you just run right down the middle, usually you'll be fine, but not always. Bailey is the first rapid we actually stopped to scout. It's about 5 miles farther downstream from Barth Hot Spring. I didn't know that we actually needed to stop and scout this, but I wanted to get a read on the noobs and their ability to see what was going on rapids that they were unfamiliar with. So we scouted it, and I was pleasantly surprised that they saw immediately what to do. I didn't have to say anything. They just saw, yeah, you do this. And here's a video of me running it at a slightly lower flow a few years earlier in my old cluster weld. Next, I slowed down to make sure the noobs could see what I was doing at 5 Mile Rapid, followed immediately by Split Rock Rapid. So here's the setup, and not really shown on the Google Maps. There's really big waves in 5 Mile Rapid, and you want to go around those and then cut across them at your earliest convenience. If you wait too late, then you will have some rocks to dodge. So I made sure the noobs got through 5 Mile and then waited for them right above Split Rock. And you'll notice that there's a tall rock right in the middle that shows up on the Google Maps, and that will also show up at relatively high flow. It pokes out of the water quite a way. It's a pretty big rock, and I assume that is why the rapid is called Split Rock. And Split Rock really isn't all that difficult, except that it's right around a corner. So you'll come around the corner, and if you're unprepared, then you'll say, well, oh, holy crap, there's this huge rapid right in front of me. Now what do I do? And it's big and messy, but if you see the line around that rock poking out of the river, then it becomes easy. So you just might get caught off guard if you're trying this running downstream first, you've never been through it, or you're not following somebody. A couple miles later is Big Mallard Rapid, and the instruction here would have been something like start down the left side and then cut across to the right. And here's a video from this run. And you can see on the right there's a giant rock, giant waves. You don't want to go over there. And then you kind of slide over above those, end up on the right side of the river, and away you go. And here's a downstream run at a bit higher flow.
Should premature ejaculation occur, the Joy of Sex album comes equipped with Big Jim Slade. Big Jim, former tight end for the Kansas City Chiefs, is outfitted with various whips, chains, and a sexual appetite that will knock your socks off. Big Jim has satisfied women throughout the world, and the capital of Nebraska is Lincoln.
The next place I remember giving instructions was Elkhorn Rapid, where I probably said something along the lines of, this is Elkhorn Rapid. Start down the left side, then sort of head out in the middle and continue on down the rapid, and don't hit the giant rock that's in the middle of the river at the end of the rapid. And here's a video from this run where we're running upstream, not downstream. So then we ran a whole bunch more rapids and ended up at Spring Bar, which is about 10 miles upstream from Reagan's, and here we are backing off the beach. And I should point out that yes, in fact, there are a lot more rapids that I'm not showing you in this video. I'm just showing you the highlights of rapids where I gave instructions. And along the way, one of the noobs said something along the lines of, "Viking be like, fuck scouting." Anyway, he really didn't know what to expect on this run, if we were going to stop and scout every darn thing. But I thought about it for a minute, and well, if we did need to stop and scout everything, then I would have suggested a completely different approach. For example, starting at Spring Bar and then running upstream the 95 miles to Corn Creek, and running upstream first, because that's the easier thing when you're trying to figure the river out and learn. But at these ideal flows, I figured we really didn't need to stop and scout all the time. The river is relatively friendly. A couple miles downstream from Spring Bar is Ruby Falls, and here are some instructions. Okay, this is Ruby. We'll start down the tongue and then head to the right, but hug the wave train.
I copy. At the tongue, inner right, follow the wave train.
A couple miles later is the Lake Creek Rapid, which is beside the Lake Creek Bridge. And we deliberately stopped to scout this because the rapid is kind of wide and messy. And if you're unfamiliar with it, you might not see the giant rock that you need to cut under, and then you could end up in the wrong place. At the flow we were running it's pretty forgiving, although the waves are pretty big. And the map shown here, there's more rocks exposed than at our flow, and the waves are smaller than at our flow. The next rapid of note is Time Zone Rapid, which is maybe a mile downstream from Riggins. And here I deliberately slowed down so the noobs could see definitely which side of the river I was on, and so they could see that I was avoiding this ledge. At the flow that we were at, you might be able to go right over the top of that ledge, but I didn't want to risk it. And then there's some big waves in there, so you might get confused about where to go. Anyway, I slowed down, so they could see what I did, and everything worked out fine. And here is a video running upstream from this particular run. Next is Fiddle Creek Rapid, which is maybe 4 miles downstream from Riggins. And this one, I just gave some instruction at the top, and then made sure they could sort of see me as I was heading down the rapid. And the instructions would have been something along the lines of, go down the right side, look out for the ledge. And it's important to note that all these rapids that are along the highway here, we scouted heavily before we did this run, years earlier. And so you may want to do that scouting too. About 8 miles downstream from Whitebird is Right Way Drop, and here I'm circling the wagons to make sure everybody can see where I'm going. About a mile later is Demon's Drop, and the preferred side changes with the flow, and I can never remember which side to go on, so I just wait until I'm on top of the rapid and then make a decision. About a mile later is Pine Bar, and we didn't really need to stop and scout, but I decided to just so the noobs could see what the low water line was like. At high flow, you can kind of run this anywhere that looks reasonable. You look out for that giant lava blob that's in the middle of the river. It's kind of obvious, even at fairly high water. At low water, then you see the yellow line. You've got to be really tight against the bank at one point. And you can see where I've noted a little sliver in the river. That little sliver shadow is in fact a rock, and it's a good idea to know that it's there, because otherwise you might think that slot is a lot wider than it is, and it isn't. You've got to be really hard against the bank there at low flow. At high flow, it doesn't matter. And here's an example run at lower flow. It was maybe 10,000 CFS when I made this run.
What's that? That wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be.
The next place I decided to circle the wagons was Snow Hole. At this flow, you can run it pretty much anywhere you want, except bear in mind that there is a big rock kind of near the right bank, so you don't want to be too close to that bank.
One more time, Peter.
The next thing is Snow Hole, so we're kind of on the right.
Okay.
The next place I gave visual instructions was China Rapid, and the instructions probably went something like, start down the left side and then cut across. And this rapid really isn't all that difficult, in my opinion. The main reason people have trouble with it is that it's on a corner, so if you fail to anticipate, then you can end up over in that blue circle, and that's kind of a bad place to be at low water. At high water, it doesn't matter so much. On this rapid, I always tend to take the same route just because it kind of reads well, even at high flow. And here's an upstream version from this particular run. About 5 miles upstream from the confluence is the Slide Rapid, and instructions for this would have been something like, hug the wave train. This rapid has a reputation for being terrifying, which in fact is correct at high flows. At very low flow, it is approximately pancake flat. And at the 16 to 18K flow that we're running it's not particularly terrifying. So here's an upstream run version from this particular run. Then we arrived at the confluence and everybody seemed pretty darn happy.
That was really something.
I never thought it could be like this. Never in my wildest imagination.
So are you thinking the Idaho is the correct way today?
Yeah, probably. I would have made it, except I had a passenger in the boat and he fucked me up and shoved me left.
Probably made it if you have sport jet.
At the confluence, we were joined by 3 other boats and then headed upstream toward Hells Canyon Dam. So at this point, we had 7 boats total. 2 of the drivers had been to the dam previously, and 5 had not. And of those 5, approximately 2 had never been in Hells Canyon before. And of these 7 boats, 6 did make it to Hells Canyon Dam. 1 turned around at Granite Rapid. And the flow was in the 16 to 18K range in Hells Canyon. So you may be wondering what point I'm trying to make here. Am I saying that you should run this? Well, the answer is no. And am I saying that you shouldn't run it? And the answer is no to that too. All I'm doing is reporting what happened so that you can see what's possible and then maybe make up your own mind about what to do. In my opinion, one of the saddest things to see in jet boating is when people buy a boat, either a crappy old boat or an expensive new boat, and then 10 years later they sell it with 10 hours on the clock. Well, this happens primarily because they're terrified of their boat and they just never get past this terror, so they never use it. There are lots of ways to reduce your terror, for example, by practicing things that cause terror, and in the beginning that might be simply getting your boat off of the trailer. So practice this, including the entire process. So you back your trailer into the water, then you get the boat off the trailer, then you park the boat, then you take your truck and trailer and park them in a parking lot somewhere, then go back to your boat and drive it around for a little while, then park your boat on the bank again, then go get your truck and back the trailer into the water, then get your boat and put it on the trailer and pull the trailer out of the water and park in the parking lot. Then do that whole thing again, preferably where there's a little bit of current and no other traffic, so you won't feel rushed and embarrassed and that kind of thing. Another more advanced terror reduction method is to find a big wave train that has no rocks in it and simply run up and down and get the feel of your boat in big waves. And that'll help you run big rapids where you need to be a little bit more precise in your boat handling. Another terror reduction method is purely mental. If you're surrounded by people who are always talking about how terrifying this is, then you will be terrified too. They might say something like, "Oh my God, did you see that rock? It was as big as a bus." And well, the appropriate response to that is, yes, in fact, I did see that rock specifically because it is as big as a bus and therefore easily avoided. Similarly, if you're on a 2-lane highway and there's a bus approaching, you don't drive over into the other lane and smash into it. You just stay in your own lane and everything is fine. And you do this throughout your life, passing thousands and thousands of buses without smashing into them, often missing them by, 10 feet or less. And there's no problem with that. So just look at it that way and you'll be fine about those bus-like rocks on the river. Another terror reduction method is simply to practice driving your boat. And you can do this anywhere, even on a lake, just practice driving around a stick that's on the lake. See how close you can get to it without hitting it. Try it going fast, going slow, backing up, you name it. If you're good at handling your boat, then you will naturally be less terrified. Another terror reduction method is to scout the difficult things from the bank. So you park your boat and scout it and figure out where a route where there are no rocks, and then make your boat follow that path. And if you don't hit a rock, then your scouting method must have been good. Then you can be confident and less terrified. Another method that may reduce your terror is simply a self-assessment of your reflexes. The normal human response to an input varies from 0.2 seconds to 1.5 seconds. So if you're at the fast end of the spectrum, then you're making 7.5 decisions while the slow guy is making 1. And so you can be encouraged by this. But if you're at the slow end of the spectrum, then maybe you want to drive your jet boat where fast reflexes are not important. And you've probably got a pretty good idea whether your reflexes are fast or slow. You know, if when you were playing basketball when you were a kid, if you were the guy that was always getting hit in the face with the ball, then probably that's not so good. An important conclusion is that there is a large aptitude component to jet boating. Some people will be good at it and some people won't, just like playing basketball or any other human endeavor. This message brought to you by Sambo and Honky, and now by Cracker and Boy.
Cracker!